Hi, I'm Darla. After 5 years of silence, my sister suddenly appeared, by sending me a box of cupcakes, tied neatly with a white ribbon, as if sugar could erase history. No card, no explanation, just her voice the next day, asking if I enjoyed them. I told her I gave them to her husband. Silence followed, then a scream. What she didn't know was that the cupcakes were just the beginning. The truth she buried? It's clawing its way back. But before we dive in, tell me, what time is it where you are, and where are you listening from? Drop it in the comments. You're about to witness what happens when the quiet sister finally stops biting her tongue. I woke before my alarm, as usual. The early stillness wrapped around the house like a thin sheet that didn't offer warmth. The heater clicked on, rattling through the vents, reminding me it was still March in Austin. Still cold enough that the hardwood stung my feet when I swung them out of bed. I pulled on my usual sweater and headed to the kitchen, flipping on the light that buzzed softly overhead. Black coffee, no sugar, no cream. The same bitter drink I'd clung to over the last 5 years since I walked away from the people who once passed for family. My inbox glowed with work reminders, legal briefs to review, court files due by Friday, client updates that could wait another hour. I sipped and stared out the kitchen window, where leafless trees scratched at the glass whenever the wind picked up. I hadn't heard a word from them since everything exploded. 5 years of missed birthdays, holidays, and Christmases passed without so much as a text from Verity or Isolda. I was the youngest, the one who tried to keep the peace, to glue things together while they tore it all apart, then blamed me for the wreckage. A single knock yanked me out of the monotony. Not the rushed knock of a delivery driver, just one sharp rap, then nothing. I hesitated, then cracked the door open. There it was, sitting right on the welcome mat that never truly welcomed anyone. A box. Small. Wrapped in white paper and tied with a matching white ribbon. The bow was flawless, like something off a boutique ad. A slip with my name, Darla, taped to the top in a handwriting I hadn't seen in years but recognized immediately. Isolda's. So neat it looked designed, like every stroke was rationed. I stood in the doorway, breath fogging in the cold, the box in my hands, heavier than it looked. I brought it inside, set it on the counter. The coffee had gone cold. I reheated it, the microwave humming far too loudly, and sat at the kitchen table. The box stared back at me like it might blink. Memories crept in. Isolda laughing at dinner. Us washing dishes while Verity smoked outside. That last Thanksgiving, the tension like static before the storm. You always think you're better than us, she'd spat. I just don't want to be like you, I'd snapped back. Then I'd walked out, slammed the door, chasing silence like it would save me. It didn't. I turned the box over in my hands, inspecting every corner. Too perfect. Too planned. I put it back down. Tried to distract myself, washed a mug, wiped the spotless counter, checked my phone. Nothing urgent. No message. Just the box. It sat there all day like a shadow. I moved around it as I did laundry, sorted through junk mail, avoided eye contact with something that didn't have eyes. By sunset, when the sky turned shades of bruised plum and gold, I had decided to leave it untouched. But as night crept in, I found myself hovering near it again. My fingers slid over the ribbon. The knot came undone too easily. The wrapping slipped off, revealing a white bakery box, unlabeled, pristine. I lifted the lid. Inside, cupcakes. 6 of them. Each one topped with pastel frosting so carefully piped, it looked like art. A pink rose, a blue daisy, a lavender swirl. Every one handmade, crafted with the kind of precision Isolda always demanded. My chest tightened. That longing for family, the one I'd buried deep, rose again. A sister who wasn't always a weapon. A hope I wasn't ready to believe in. Then I spotted it, tucked beneath the final cupcake in the corner of the box. A note. Small, folded, edges sticky with frosting. I pulled it out gently, opening it like it might self-destruct. 7 words in her familiar script. I never forgot what you did. The chill in those words cut deeper than the air outside. My stomach turned. The cupcakes, once delicate, now felt like threats. What did she think I had done? I remembered the will reading. The way Verity stared at me like I was a stranger. The way Isolde's mouth clenched shut, her eyes cold as ice. I placed the note back inside, shut the lid, and started pacing. The kitchen tiles cold beneath my bare feet. My breath uneven. Throw them out. That's what I told myself. Call her. Demand an explanation. Or just pretend it never happened. Instead, I opened the fridge, slid aside the milk and the half-used pickles, and placed the box in the center. I stood with my palm flat on the door, eyes closed. I took a sip of cold tea and stared at nothing, knowing tomorrow would come with questions I wasn't ready to face. The tea was bitter, but I kept drinking. Just to stay present, to remind myself I was still here. The morning light cut across the blinds in narrow slats, landing on the fridge every time I opened it for no reason, just to check if the box had vanished. It hadn't. I paced the kitchen again, tracing the same circuit: sink, window, table, counter, back again. The silence pressed down, thick enough to choke on. Her words echoed anyway. I never forgot what you did. But what did she believe I did? In my memory, she turned away. She crossed lines. She shifted every conversation until I was the villain and she the victim. I glanced at the stove clock, 8:17. I'd washed the same mug twice, wiped the same spot 3 times, and now stared at the glowing numbers as if they held an answer. Then the phone rang. The sound carved through the quiet. I jumped. The mug clinked in the sink. I didn't need to see the screen, I knew. That number was etched into me from years of late-night calls filled with demands disguised as concern. My finger hovered above answer. My heart pounded, and the frustration rose. I wasn't that version of myself anymore. Still, I picked up. Darla. Her voice came through, smooth and casual, like we hadn't gone silent for half a decade. So, did you like the cupcakes? I let the quiet hang, long enough for it to dig into her comfort. I could hear the crack in her polished tone, imagine her in a spotless kitchen, nails manicured, playing the role of the perfect sister everyone loved. Did you like them? She asked again, her voice dipped in a sweetness that might have passed for sincerity if you didn't know her like I did. I leaned against the kitchen counter, staring out at the backyard, where the grass still lay brown and lifeless, waiting for spring to pull it back to green. I wasn't sure what to do with them, I said, keeping my voice as steady as I could manage. A tiny tremor slipped into her response, almost imperceptible. Well, I thought it might be nice. You know, after all this time. Maybe we should talk. I let the silence grow thick between us. I wanted her to feel it, to squirm in it. Then I said, I gave them to your husband. Nothing. The silence exploded, loud, tense, like a scream just waiting to break. And then she did scream. What? What did you say? I pulled the phone back and stared at it, as if it might offer a translation for her sudden, panicked unraveling. Her words spilled fast, messy, frantic, not the kind of panic you'd expect over pastries. Are you out of your mind, Darla? Why would you do something so reckless? I'm not sure why you're this upset, I replied, soft and calm, though my gut was tightening. A signal inside me was flaring, I just stepped into something I hadn't seen coming. Don't play dumb, she hissed, her voice breaking. You have no idea what you've done. I exhaled, pushed myself upright from the counter. Then maybe you should explain it to me. Dead air. I thought she'd hung up until I heard her again, ragged breathing, shallow and uneven, like she was scrambling to pull herself together. You need to get rid of them, she finally said, barely above a whisper. What's in them, Isolde? I asked, trying to steady my voice, though I could feel the fear creeping around the edges of my calm. You don't get it. You never have, she murmured, and I thought she might have been crying. Real or not, I couldn't tell anymore. I tightened my grip on the phone, eyes locked on the fridge like it might swing open and spill its secrets. It's time you told me, I said, low and firm, not giving her a way out. A beat. Then silence. Then the call dropped. I stood in the middle of the kitchen, her final words echoing louder than the dial tone that replaced her voice. I slowly lowered the phone, the buzz of the dead line vibrating in my palm, settling into my bones like a tremor. I placed it gently on the table, careful not to break the strange calm that had wrapped itself around me. The street lamp outside filtered through the blinds, tracing shifting patterns on the floor as the breeze stirred the bare branches outside. I hadn't turned on the main light. I let the shadows settle in instead. I paced the kitchen, trying to make sense of Isolde's panic. Her demand to throw away the cupcakes. The box still sat in the fridge like a challenge, daring me to forget it. Every time I opened the door for a drink I didn't need, I was hit by the faint, cloying scent of frosting that felt wrong, like it didn't belong in the cold hush of my home. Later, I lay fully clothed on my bed, eyes fixed on the ceiling fan turning above me, its slow rhythm matching the loop of thoughts in my head. Her fear. Her voice cracking. Her desperation. You don't know what you've done. I repeated the phrase, over and over, hoping it would unlock something. What was she scared of? Me? Gideon? Or something deeper, buried beneath swirls of pastel icing and that meticulous white ribbon? I wrapped the blanket tighter around me, but the chill kept sinking in. My eyes burned, not from sleep but from exhaustion. And when I shut them, all I saw was her face at that last dinner, the way she looked right through me, laughing with Gideon, brushing me off like I was just another chair at the table. She took the leaf-shaped napkin I folded with care and tossed it like trash. That moment stuck with me, sharp as a blade. I remembered Gideon's glance, soft, maybe pitying, before he looked away and pretended he hadn't noticed. The phone lit up on my nightstand, its glow stark in the dark. An unknown number. My stomach knotted. I didn't need to guess. I already knew this call was going to change something. The message was short. We need to talk. Gee. I stared at the screen, the blue light catching in my eyes as I debated whether I should respond. Whether I wanted to know what he had to say. Gideon was always polite, careful. The in-law who filled my glass without asking, who once leaned in during a quiet dinner and whispered, "You okay?" while Isolde spun stories to pull attention her way. I remembered the sound of the napkin crumpling in her fist, and how he looked at me like he wanted to say something, but didn't. The phone buzzed again. Another message. About the cupcakes. Please. I breathed out slowly, only then realizing I'd been holding my breath. I sat up, the blanket slipping to the floor. Cold wrapped around my arms. I typed back. What? The reply came instantly, so fast I flinched. Can we meet tomorrow? Somewhere public. I pressed the phone to my forehead, trying to collect the tangled emotions in my chest, fear, anger, confusion, all braiding into one thread I couldn't untangle. What had Isolde done? What did she think I had done that would make Gideon reach out in the middle of the night? I crossed to the window and looked out at the still, sleeping street. It was too quiet, too calm for what I now knew was unraveling beneath the surface. The sky was just beginning to brighten, pale light brushing the rooftops. Another day was coming, whether I was ready or not. Where? I texted. A pause, then. The coffee shop on Main. Noon. I didn't reply. I let the screen fade to black in my hand. The fan continued its slow, endless spin as I returned to the bed. I sat on the edge, watching sunlight creep in at the edges of the blinds. I switched off the bedside lamp with a click that echoed too loudly. And in that moment, I realized, I wasn't scared of Isolde anymore. I was scared of whatever truth Gideon was about to hand me. Morning came dull and heavy. The kind that seeps into your bones. I moved through the house in silence, the rain tapping at the windows, the scent of yesterday's coffee clinging to the air like a memory. I left it in the pot. I parked across the street from the diner, watching the neon sign flicker through the mist, steadying myself before I went inside. It wasn't Gideon I feared. It was the weight of everything I'd buried and ignored. The silence I'd mistaken for peace. Inside, the air smelled like burnt toast and too strong coffee, comforting in the way only a roadside diner could be. I slid into a booth near the window, the vinyl seat groaning beneath me, my hands folded to keep them still. A child banged a spoon against a plate nearby. His mother scolded him softly, smiling despite her exhaustion. It made something ache inside me, something I never got in those strained family meals that ended in silence or sharp remarks hidden behind smiles. The bell over the door jingled. Gideon stepped in, looking tired, older. His hair was mussed, a deep wrinkle cutting through his shirt like he'd worn it straight from the floor. His eyes scanned the room and landed on me. He hesitated, like he might turn around and leave. Then he walked over, slid into the seat across from me. The waitress set down a cup of coffee without asking. He gripped it like it was the only warm thing he had. The rain tapped steadily against the diner windows, a quiet rhythm that matched the thick tension sitting between us. Neither of us spoke at first, we let the low murmur of the room fill the silence. I watched the condensation run in slow lines down the glass, the stillness pressing into my chest. Why did you want to talk about the cupcakes? I asked evenly. My tone was calm, but my fingers were already folding the napkin in front of me, shaping it into a small leaf-like muscle memory. He glanced down at it, a flicker of recognition, then locked eyes with me. Because you need to know what's really going on, he said. I waited, not pushing, letting him speak when he was ready. I could see the words working their way across his face. She planned to take them back, he finally said, voice raspy. When she thought you might have eaten one, she freaked out. She didn't explain why, just unraveled. I stayed still, letting the truth settle in. The cupcakes hadn't just been symbolic, they were more dangerous than I'd understood. And you? I asked. I stopped her before she could deliver them, he said, rubbing a hand across his jaw. I figured it was just another one of her tricks. But she's hiding more than you realize. He looked around, as if expecting her to burst through the door. You think I don't know what she's capable of? I said. My voice carried a sharp edge, more bitterness than I meant to show. His shoulders sagged. She's been draining money from Verity's estate for years, he admitted. The sentence landed like a stone between us, cutting through the clatter of dishes and the steam from the espresso machine. What? I breathed. I'd heard him clearly, but I still needed him to repeat it. She's been channeling money into side accounts. Labeled as home repairs, medical expenses for Verity, none of it real. I found the records. He pulled out his phone and began scrolling through files. His screen glowed with spreadsheets, transaction logs. I scanned them. Line after line of false charges, of money disappearing while I'd struggled in my one-bedroom rental, wondering how I'd afford rent and groceries, while she smiled in family holiday photos and claimed she was managing things. She's terrified you'll expose her, Gideon said in a hushed voice. That's what the cupcakes were about. A warning. I think. I think if you corner her, she'll do something worse. The napkin leaf slipped from my fingers, unfolding slowly as it dropped to the table. The betrayal crystallized, not chaotic, not explosive. Just cold and sharp. So you want my help to bring her down, I said. It wasn't a question. Gideon nodded. The lines etched in his face deepened. I can't do this by myself. She'll ruin me. You've seen how she spins things. But you know the truth. I leaned back in the booth, the vinyl creaking under me. Outside, the rain had thickened into a steady curtain. For a moment, I considered walking away, letting the family unravel on its own, burning from the inside out. But I thought about every instant ramen dinner, every time she told people she was supporting Mom, while I stayed invisible. I remembered the way Mom's face lit up when I visited, only for Isolde to sweep in and usher me out like I was a disruption. Mom needs rest, she'd always said, but what she really meant was you don't belong here anymore. No. I couldn't stay silent. I met Gideon's eyes. I'll help, I said. But I want the full truth. Everything. Relief washed over him like a tide. And for the first time in years, I saw the man who once handed me a cold drink at a backyard cookout and said, "You don't deserve the way she treats you." The check landed on the table. We both reached. Our fingers brushed. I pulled mine back. Gideon paid, sliding a couple of soft bills beneath his coffee cup before standing. He looked taller now, steadier. Ready. When I stepped outside, the rain was still falling. The cool air hit my skin, clearing the heat that had built inside. I clutched the napkin, damp now, wrinkled, but still something real, something mine. I walked to my car, the droplets soaking through my coat sleeves. I didn't let go of the napkin. Not yet. Not this time. I left the diner knowing there was no walking away anymore. Not when I was finally this close to the truth. Driving through North Austin that gray morning, the sky hung low and heavy. The clouds pressed down so thick they felt physical. I cracked the window, letting the chill keep me alert. I ran lines through my head, what I'd say, what I wouldn't let her twist. I pulled up in front of her house. Still perfect, still the same. The lawn I once mowed each summer. The porch I used to run to with bouquets of dandelions. The house I hadn't seen in 5 years. I parked along the curb, the engine ticking softly in the stillness. Birdsong floated faintly through the silence. My fingers tightened on the steering wheel. I stared at the walkway I once ran down with joy, back when I thought love was enough. Then I stepped out. Gravel crunched under my feet. The porch still had that faded mat with welcome barely legible anymore. I remembered leaving flowers there one Mother's Day, before the lines were drawn, before I realized I was no longer welcome. I took a breath that didn't feel like enough and knocked. The door opened after a long pause. There stood Verity, robe pulled tight around her, teacup in hand, hair pinned up with wisps falling loose. Her eyes widened first, then narrowed in that careful, practiced way she always wore when life didn't go how she wanted. "Darla," she said evenly. "Mom," I replied. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she stepped aside without a word. I followed her in. The scent of chamomile lingered in the kitchen. A crust of toast sat abandoned beside the sink. The soft tick of the clock echoed through the tiny home. We moved into the living room, where the walls were packed with framed photos, Isolde's vacations, her children, her picture-perfect life. But not a single photo of me. Not from these last 5 years. Verity eased into her recliner, fingers trembling slightly as she lifted the teacup. "You look tired," she said, a mother's concern wrapped tightly in subtle judgment. I didn't respond. I sat across from her, placing my hands on my knees to keep them steady. "We need to talk." About the estate. About the will. Her gaze drifted toward the window. Steam curled around her face from the tea. It's complicated, sweetheart. Isolde made it complicated, I said quietly. I let the silence sit there between us. She shook her head, her eyes on the tea. She was helping me manage everything. You left, Darla. It wasn't fair for her to do it alone. The old wound flared, always the one blamed for leaving, when the truth was I'd been shoved out. I didn't leave because I wanted to, I said. I left because there was no space left for me. She sighed and set the cup down, fingers folding in her lap. There's no sense digging all this up now. There is, I said, leaning forward. Gideon came to me. He showed me the accounts. The forged paperwork. The transfers. She's been stealing, Mom. From all of us. Her hands shook. She reached for her tea again but missed it. That's not, she wouldn't, she said. She did, I said, voice thick. You know she did. Her shoulders tensed. Her eyes filled as she looked away, blinking hard. The room seemed to close in around us. The kitchen clock sounded louder than before, ticking off the moment. Mom, I said gently. Please. Just tell me the truth. The silence felt endless. I could hear birdsong again, faint through the glass. She closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were rimmed with tears. Her voice was a hush I had to lean in to catch. She said if I didn't sign the new forms, she'd stop covering the medical bills, she whispered. Her voice cracked. She told me you didn't care. That you'd moved on. That we weren't your concern anymore. The pain twisted in my chest. And you believed her. She made it easy to, she said, voice breaking as tears spilled freely. I was scared, Darla. I didn't know what else to do. And you let her force me out, I said, my voice low but steady, trembling just beneath the surface. I thought I was doing what was best for the family, she whispered, tears landing on the front of her robe. I leaned back, absorbing it all, the truth, the pain, and her weakness. Her silence when I needed her voice. I can't keep pretending, I said, my voice gaining strength. I'm going to uncover everything, even if it means burning it all down. She wept quietly, hands shielding her face, swaying in her chair like she was trying to disappear. I walked to the door, paused as I opened it. I'm sorry, she called softly, so faint I barely heard her. I didn't look back. I stepped outside, the cold air meeting me, and shut the door behind me. Her apology lingered, but it wasn't enough. Not anymore. The drive home was quiet, windows halfway down, the wind carrying away the scent of old tea and the weight of her whispered regret. Dusk had deepened by the time I pulled into my cracked driveway. The sky had turned a dark steel gray, and the streetlights blinked on like weary sentinels. I turned off the engine, sitting still for a moment as the tick of cooling metal filled the silence. Inside, I flipped on the porch light, it buzzed, casting long, stretched shadows through the window slats. I moved into the kitchen, filled the kettle, and waited as it began to steam. My mother's confession echoed in my mind, threading through every creak and sigh of the house. As I steeped the tea, a heavy knock rattled the door. It wasn't cautious. It was sharp and aggressive, a knock you feel in your bones. I peered through the blinds, her car sat haphazard at the curb. Isolde. She didn't wait for me to open the door. She shoved past me, trailing cold air and perfume, tossing her purse to the floor. Her eyes darted around the kitchen, then landed on me. Her jaw was tight. You really think you're going to destroy me? Her voice buzzed with fury, fists clenching at her sides as she paced. I moved to the opposite side of the counter, grounding myself with the heat of the mug in my hands. You came here just to yell? I said. That's new. She laughed, but it was jagged and mean. You don't get to come back and play the victim. You left. I sipped the tea, letting the burn anchor me. Maybe I was forced out. She stilled, eyes narrowed. You've been talking to Gideon. Maybe he's tired of hiding your messes. She slammed her hand down, rattling the mug. You think you're clever? You don't know anything. I set the cup down and met her glare. I know you've been draining Mom's accounts. Stealing from the estate. From me. Her laugh broke sharp like glass. She snatched her purse, yanked out a folder, and threw it open on the counter. You want to play games? She snapped. Fine. I've got enough here to paint you as delusional, obsessive, dangerous. You want a war, Darla? I'll bury you. For a moment, the only sound was the porch light humming overhead. You'd destroy everything just to cover yourself, I said, quiet and sure. She leaned in, perfume choking, her face inches from mine. I'll take it all, money, Mom's care, the house, if you push me. My pulse roared in my ears. I spotted the napkin I'd folded into a leaf the night before. That old habit from childhood. The reminder of who I used to be, who I wasn't anymore. I stared back at her, letting the calm rise. Try me, I said. Her face flickered. Just for a second. But then rage returned. You'll regret this. I have evidence, I said evenly. And I'm prepared to use it. She barked something between a laugh and a scream, slammed the counter, and began snatching up the scattered papers. You're nothing, Darla. You always were. I leaned forward, voice low. We'll see. Her eyes were wild as she stormed out, purse clutched tight, slamming the door behind her. The house seemed to inhale afterward. The silence pressed in around me, thick with all she hadn't said. I locked the door, checked it twice, and exhaled. The kettle hissed. I poured a cup of tea I didn't drink. I barely slept. Twisting in sheets, checking my phone for messages that never came. When morning finally crept in, I dressed simply, sweater and jeans, and drove across town under an iron sky threatening rain. Gideon's house was plain from the outside, forgettable. But inside, it looked like a war room. Papers everywhere, computers pinging, folders open. He greeted me with a nod and a tired smile. Morning, he said, voice rough. She come by? I nodded and sat down, ignoring the buzzing on my phone. She tried to scare me off. He rubbed his jaw. That means we're hitting too close. We worked in silence, sorting documents, flipping through ledgers and account statements. Each one a thread in the net she'd cast. I recognized dates when I'd asked Mom for help and been told there was nothing to spare. Now I saw where the money had gone. Isolde's name was everywhere, her handwriting, her signatures. Gideon played a voicemail, her voice, sharp and unapologetic. I did what I had to. She can't just come back and ruin everything. I closed my eyes. The weight of her betrayal crashed down like a wave. When I looked again, I saw a napkin folded on his counter, a small leaf. His daughters had done it for an art project, he'd said earlier. Same fold I used to make at family dinners. Before I was erased. It was the spark I needed. I'm not letting her win, I said. Gideon nodded. We need to be smart. We go to the lawyer first. Everything documented. He handed me coffee, too bitter, but solid, and we kept going. Scanning. Saving. Printing. Uploading. Rain started again, beating against the windows as the hours slipped by. Then the texts came in. Dozens. From numbers I recognized. People I hadn't heard from in years. Why are you lying about your sister? You need help. Stop this, Darla. I read them silently, hands numb. Isolde had already begun her version of the story, casting me as the unstable one. Gideon took the phone from my hand. She's afraid. This is all she has left, scaring you into silence. I stood and began to pace, heart pounding. They'll believe her. They always do. I'm the one who left. And now you're the one telling the truth, he replied. Let her shout. Let her lie. What we have. It's solid. I scanned the table, the files, the paper, the truth she tried to bury now laid bare. The fear was still there. But something else bloomed under it, a sharp, steady resolve. I sat down, opened my laptop, and pulled up the email to the lawyer. Attachments loaded. Recordings, screenshots, documents. Everything. Before hitting send, I turned on the camera. My reflection stared back, tired, resolute. My name is Darla, I said. This is what my sister has done. And this is what I'm going to prove. My voice remained even, clear, as I spoke into the camera, laying out every detail, the embezzlement, the manipulation, the threats. I saved the video alongside the files, a safeguard against any future attempts to distort the truth. My finger hovered over the send button for just a second before Gideon's hand landed gently on my shoulder. This is it, he murmured. I gave a small nod, exhaling deeply, as if I were finally allowing myself to breathe after years underwater. Then I hit send. For a while, I just sat there. The laptop screen dimmed slowly while the sound of the rain became softer, more rhythmic. It was early evening, the blue hour, when the streetlights begin flickering on, casting their amber reflections across the slick pavement. I cupped my hands around a lukewarm mug of coffee, the chills soaking into my skin, but instead of retreating, it anchored me. No turning back. Not anymore. My phone buzzed, sliding slightly on the counter. Isolde. Her name lit up the screen, icy and familiar. I pressed the speaker button and braced myself. You ungrateful snake, she snapped immediately, her voice raw, every syllable trembling with fury. Do you even know what you've done? I said nothing, letting her fury crash against my silence like waves battering a cliff. The storm outside seemed to echo her mood, thunder rumbled in the distance, the kind that hangs in the air like a held breath. You've broken this family, Darla. Destroyed it, she screamed, voice straining. You think you're some sort of savior? You're pathetic. Her venom came fast and sharp, layered with accusations, false claims, legal threats, smear tactics. She painted herself the martyr and me the villain, her voice spiraling in desperation. When she finally ran out of steam, the only sound left was her uneven breathing and the soft patter of rain on glass. Are you done? I asked, my voice quiet but unshaken. I could almost hear her pacing, feel her sweat or tears as she bit down whatever came next. Darla, you need to undo this, she said, her tone suddenly low, colder now. Retract it. Call the lawyer. Say you made it up. We can still fix this. I looked at the napkin on the counter, creased, a little damp, but still folded into that leaf I had made when I decided I'd stop hiding. I pressed my finger to it, grounding myself. I'm not undoing anything, I said. The files are already with the lawyer, the authorities, and the rest of the family. They know now. All of them. There was a pause. I heard her breath stutter. You're making a mistake, she hissed. You think you're better than me, but you have no idea how the world works. People like me stay quiet, I said, letting the steel rise in my tone, so people like you can steal and lie and pretend you're the victim. I'm done with that. You made your choices. Now you live with them. Another long silence. Then her voice returned, low and venomous. "You'll regret this, Darla. I will ruin you." And then the line went dead. The kitchen hummed with silence, the threat lingering like smoke. I released the counter, realizing how tightly I'd been gripping it. My fingers were stiff, knuckles white. Outside, the rain shifted into a downpour. The gutters overflowed. The world smelled like electricity and wet pavement. And yet, for the first time, I didn't feel like I was drowning in it. I stood straighter. The fear was still there, yes, but it had a shape now, something I could face head-on. As the night passed, the storm faded. Morning came soft and gray. The streets glistened, scrubbed clean by the downpour, the sky beginning to crack open with sunlight. I cracked the kitchen window, letting in the cool breeze. The curtain brushed against my arm as I stood sipping fresh coffee, watching clouds drift. My phone rang. The lawyer's name lit up. I answered. "It's done," he said simply. "The authorities have what they need. Her accounts are frozen. We've started the process of restitution." I let the words sink in, the warmth of them cutting through the chill inside me. I closed my eyes, just for a second, and let myself feel it, relief. Vindication. Proof that this fight had mattered. I set the phone down and picked up the napkin again, the leaf I had folded days ago. I smoothed it gently and remembered that family dinner so long ago, the moment Isolde had plucked the same kind of napkin from my hands with a scoff. I had wanted peace back then, had thought if I just tried harder, it would come. But I was done with that. I placed the napkin in a drawer and closed it. The phone rang again. This time, my mother. I hesitated, let it ring, then answered. "Darla." Her voice was ragged. "I heard about everything. Isolde, she says you're tearing the family apart." "She would say that," I replied. "But you know the truth now." A beat of silence. Then soft crying. Not dramatic, just the weary sobs of a woman who had lived too long with denial. "Can't we fix this?" she asked, voice trembling. "Can't you help put things back together?" I closed my eyes. "Mom. I can't fix what she chose to break." She didn't reply. Just breathed softly, the weight of her silence like ash settling on everything left between us. The call ended quietly, no goodbyes. Just a click. Later that morning, I walked to the coffee shop down the street, the one with scuffed tables and sun-streaked windows. I took a corner seat, watching families pass by. Couples with strollers, an old man walking his dog, laughter in the distance. I thought about all those years I'd given up my own voice to keep the peace. I thought about the lie I had swallowed for so long, that silence was safer, more loyal. I knew now it wasn't. My phone buzzed again. "Isolde. One last message. We could have kept this between us." I stared at it. That final thread of control, of manipulation wrapped in false intimacy. For the first time in a long time, I smiled. A real one, quiet, but sure. I deleted the message. No response. I sat there for a while, coffee warm in my hand, watching the world move forward. The wound was still there, it would never fully heal, but it no longer defined me. I thought of Gideon. Of how he had chosen truth, even when it meant losing everything. I thought of myself, of the woman I was finally becoming. I sipped the coffee, already making plans in my head. Maybe I'd move. Somewhere quieter, maybe near water. I'd start my own paralegal consultancy. Build something no one could take from me. Maybe, one day, I'd even visit my mother again. But not just yet.